I'm Bad Brad Berkwitt from America.
I'm Gord Deppe from Canada.
And we welcome you to our show, Last Stop, the Twilight Zone show. Folks, is that not the coolest guitar riff ever?
One of the best TV show themes ever, too, I think.
All right, folks. So I think I'm going to start out like this little kibitzing that Gord and I do. You know, we always rate the episodes 1 to 10. So I'm going to tell you now that that's a subliminal message on his shirt of what he's going to rate this particular episode. This will be our last stop, the Twilight Zone show, because Gord and I are finished. In fact, on the back,
no worries.
Is Bella? What's your dog's name? Bella?
Luca.
I'm sorry, Luca. My dog's Bella. So Luca is on the back. So if Gord rates this a 3, Luca and I will be doing the next subsequent shows.
Yeah, it gets 3 barks. That's the rating. 3
exactly,
barks.
3 barks. And if you remember last week, folks, Luca had 8 barks because, like Santino did on an interview I did the other day, was barking. So I got to ask you, since it's a week later, did you finally get on the list for a shot?
Not yet. No. Things are very slow here. They shut down 3 more big facilities where they're giving vaccines this weekend because of lack of vaccines. They don't have enough.
Wow.
You know, it's like, you know how many people we've had vaccines so far in Canada? I heard it was like less than 2% of the population of the country. You guys have done at least half or something, haven't you?
Yeah, we go in 4 days. We get the first, Deb and I go about 20 minutes from here. We get the Pfizer shot, the first one. So I'm waiting because a lot of people that are my followers on Twitter, they do updates.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what symptoms I'm going to have. So
I know people always talk about healthcare and stuff like that. You know, like Canada's, we can never, you know, look down on American healthcare again after what happened here. First of all, you got your vaccines out faster and more efficiently, and you've taken care of your long-term care places way better than here. There's been so many outbreaks here. So
yeah, and folks, for the people that are really detailed, you'll notice that Gord changed to another spot in his house, which is a cool backdrop. So he's still got the guitars, which is really cool.
I go where Luca goes.
Are you in the basement or you're on the top floor now?
I'm kind of just off the kitchen.
Okay.
Like there's
cool.
The little side room where I play my guitar in the mornings, put the news on, and have my coffee.
So you don't know this is an inside joke between Gord and I, but he had a really cool video up about a month or 2 ago of Megan, and she was in there like jacuzzi, and Bella was. It was Bella. I keep saying Bella. Luca. I'm sorry, Luca. Luca Brasi from frickin' The Godfather was running around, and they thought that Luca would come back, and Luca was like, "No, I'm gonna run around." So I'm wondering, you're not gonna do an episode from the hot tub in a Speedo, are you, by chance? Because if so, we're gonna put an R rating on this one.
That would definitely be the Twilight Zone for a lot of people.
That would be our highest rated show. All the women would be going crazy.
What would you call that episode?
So, all right. So what else? Anything else?
That could be another show. Remember Hot Tub Time Machine? We could have Hot Tub Twilight Zone, right?
There you go.
We could host the show sitting in a hot tub.
Yeah, but see, you're lucky. You got one. We got to find one, so we don't have one yet.
That's right.
But all right. We're going to, as we said last week, we're going to reverse roles for the next couple episodes. So Gord is going to, anything else going on or no?
No, let's get on to this because I want to see the tears come down your face as we talk about this episode. It's an episode called Walking Distance. From October 30th, 1959, my favorite year I was born. I know this is one of your favorites, if not your favorite. It was Rod's favorite. It's directed by Robert Stevens, again, written by Rod Serling, of course. The main actors are Gig Young, and young, very young, Ron Howard. And he was so young they called Ronny Howard. Mm-hmm. He was only 4 years old in this. You know, it was incredible. Wonderful script and story. And I want to leave this one to you, and you give me the synopsis of this one because you know this one inside out.
Yeah, I do. One other thing I will say, this is episode 5 of the series because we're going in.
Oh, my.
Yep,
I'm
that's
doing
okay.
this.
We're reversing. Hey, Gord got me last week. I forgot to shift it back to him. So this is the reality part of it, even though I don't like reality TV, but this is the fun part because you see that we don't edit our little bloopers out. And one day we'll do a blooper reel. So episode 5, as I said, and one other main actor was Frank Overton, who was his father in the series.
Yeah.
So the synopsis of the show, and it is my #1 favorite show of all time. That's why if you watch our intro, Gord and I picked our top 3 episodes, though I think Gord coming back to it may change and rotate, but my top 3 always are going to be #1, Walking Distance. The synopsis of this particular show is Martin Sloan, played by the late Gig Young, is an ad executive. He's in charge, and he pulls up to a gas station, and he's in I believe it's a Mercedes-Benz. It's black and white, but I believe it's a little sports roadster, two-door car, sports car, and pulls over and he's beeping on the horn, and he doesn't have much patience, like Deb says, kind of like me, and calls for the gas station attendant to come over, and the gas station attendant's like, you're gonna keep blowing your horn, buddy, and then he kind of loosens up a little bit, and he talks to him, and he gets back in the day, which there's nostalgia. You pull up and they do an oil change at the gas station. They check your oil. They don't do that anymore, or clean the windshield, which I'm sure they probably even did that in Canada back in the day in the gas stations. So he's asking about how far Homewood is, which is where he grew up. Now, I got to admit this one thing. As many times have I seen this episode, I didn't realize, or maybe I just didn't pay attention to it, that the town was called Homewood. And probably about 20 minutes from where we live in St. John, Deb and I, there is Homewood, Illinois. It has nothing to do with it, but it's just interesting because I've been to that city that got some really good restaurants there. So it kind of resonated with me. So he said, oh, how far? And he said, about 1.5 miles. And then Gig Young gives the title. That's Walking Distance. So he walks, and then the next shot is he's walking into a little, like a
soda shop.
Like a soda shop, which I used to go to as a kid, very nostalgic. I always used to love those. And you'd go up and they called them soda jerks. And the guys that made it, had the little hat on. And he got his 3-scoop ice cream. And he's looking at the guy and he's like reminiscing with him. He's like, your face looks so familiar. And I love one of the character actor, whatever his name was, I don't know. But he says, yeah, I got one of those faces that, something. And he says, I believe he said it was a nickel or a dime.
Yeah.
And he's like, wow. And he said, well, what about Old Man Wilson? Because he said, and he's telling about the town, and the guys look at him a little strange. And Gig Young takes off, and the soda jerk guy, as we call him, goes upstairs, and Old Man Wilson is up there, described as Gig Young said, leaning back in a chair, and he tells him he needs to order some more chocolate or something like that. So right then, he's definitely stepped into the Twilight Zone, went back in time. So he's walking around the neighborhood, and it's funny because I always tell Deb, and I know that's probably, you mentioned this about Where Is Everybody, about a back lot. You know how the back lot's like the studios. That had to be a back lot. But still, there was I think, and I could be wrong, I feel that I love those type of neighborhoods with the nice trees and just their you see, like where we live, there's hardly any trees in this particular subdivision, and I can't stand it. So he's walking around, and he's reminiscing. He goes past his house, and he goes over to a park, and he helps a lady whose son is up in the tree instead of a cat, and they're calling the kid out of the tree. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, he looks over, and he sees a kid carving his name, and it's Martin Sloan as the kid. So again, you're in the Twilight Zone, and Martin says, everybody does it, mister. Everybody, because you're Martin Sloan. He said, that's me, something to that effect. And then he chases him, winds up at his old house with his parents. Father is Frank Overton, mother was Irene Tidrow. And he's talking to him, and he's trying to explain to him who he is, and they're looking at him, as you know, like, who are you? How do you know these type of things? Then nostalgia again, the kid next door with the 1935 rumble seat car. He's talking to the kid who, I don't know if you ever used to watch Leave It to Beaver. Did you ever watch that? He looked like Eddie Haskell to me.
Yeah.
He kind of had that Eddie Haskell look. And he's talking to him. And fast forward, he comes back at night. And Ronny Howard, we got to mention Ronny Howard. So Ronny Howard, as Gord said, he's playing with the marbles and he's talking about Augies and I think Tiger Eyes and real cute scene. And he says,
yeah,
"You're not Martin Sloan. I know Martin Sloan." And he runs off into the house. He's just adorable. You can tell it's Ronny Howard,
yeah,
little Opie. And,
totally. You could tell. Yeah.
Yeah, you could tell. And Martin Sloan, Gig Young, comes back to the house at night. He's trying to explain to him, and he's trying to show him the card, his ID card and his credit cards. And the mother pushes him down, and he hears, as Gord said, the merry-go-round. And he's Martin. And he takes off, and he goes to the merry-go-round. This is the part I tell you, no lie, viewers, every single time the tears they start coming down. He's chasing after Martin, who's got a thing of popcorn in his hand, and Martin sees him, and he runs, and he gets his leg caught up at the bottom of the merry-go-round.
Yeah.
And then Gig Young feels it. He feels the pain in his leg too. So it stops. The conductor of the merry-go-round is holding Martin. All of a sudden, his father. No, his father didn't come at that point. I'm trying to think. No.
It's very close after.
Father comes after. Yeah, father comes after. So Gig Young is sitting there. His father is walking the Ferris wheel. He's looking for Gig Young, and Martin's sitting there with his head. And that's when the greatest of all the dialect comes with the lines like, "There's only one summer, and it's his. Is it so bad where you come from?" And he says, "I thought so, Pop. I think he said something like, I was on a merry-go-round." Excuse me, something like that. Beautiful dialogue. Like I said, the tears just come down. Why it resonates with me so much is, and here's the likes. I thought it was beautifully acted by Gig Young, Frank Overton. Ronny Howard was even cute in his little role. Irene Tidrow was the mother. Her part was smaller, but Frank Overton and Gig Young, just a beautiful, beautiful piece of acting. As Gord said, beautiful piece of writing by Rod Serling. As well, going to go to Gord's guy, who he always talks about, Bernard Herrmann did the score. I could listen to the score just alone, and I have listened to the score. It's just beautiful. And why it resonates with me, besides for those things, is my father passed away on July 2nd, 1998. My father was my alpha, omega, my light, my everything. He just was everything to me. And you don't realize till you lose somebody how much some people do, but a lot of times you don't realize something till it's gone. And with my father, adored him when he was alive, but when I lost him, and couldn't have those conversations anymore, but I have all of my memories, I see my father and everybody pretty much wants to go back, but you can't. You can go back in your mind. You could go back to the neighborhood, but it's never the same. Something's changed. Your house may be there. Maybe your house isn't there. Yeah. November of 19, I took Debbie for the first time to where I grew up on Miami Beach. I'm from New York, but my parents divorced in 75. So from 75 to 84, I grew up in Miami Beach. And I grew up in a lot of different places, actually in apartments, not houses. So I took Debbie to every place that I grew up. So when Martin goes back to his house, which is really, I don't want to take away, I don't want to get into Gord's part, so I'll save that because I'm sure he's going to talk about it. But I did what Martin was doing. I reminisced. I saw my father coming out. One apartment building had a pool, and we used to hit at the pool, hang out at the pool and go swimming. Another one had a hotel across the street from where we lived. We used to go over there because he knew people, and he used to let us come in and use the pool. So that part was reminiscent. So that was my likes. I really, honestly, I didn't have any dislikes of this particular episode. It is my favorite. And for me, who will never forget my memories of my father, and I love nostalgia, I love reminiscing, this one does it for me. So before I do get emotional, I'm going to turn it over to Gord to do trivia and facts.
Well, you held it together pretty well.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, I tried.
Well, you know what you're talking about, that thing about guys wanting to, never having that relationship with their father, and then after they're gone, you kind of miss them more than you thought you ever would. And and you kind of, you know, realize how much you needed them, right? And that's a common thing with all guys. It's like, what's wrong with us? You know, we gotta, you know, like I don't know if you have a son or not. My son now, we hug and kiss and I love you, and that was not us when we were growing up. We were from the Twilight Zone decade, you know, the years when people were a little bit more staunch and stuff. So, yeah, it's a really interesting thing. And like I said, it was Rod's favorite, and I'll get into why. You know, he did pretty well what happened in the episode in real life every summer with his family, going back to visit his. So I'm okay. Let me go through this. You know, I did mention that I had so much love for the show, and that it was probably the most influential thing in my life as a youngster, in my imagination, in my writing, music, and everything. And I have the book here, just so you know, Spoon Fed. It's like all the juicy. I call them 50 Shades of Spoons, in case you want. You can get it on Amazon, on you know, everywhere, online, you know, wherever you want, Chapters, Indigo stores, whatever, or from Spoon's Music. But I want to find the little part that proves that I was serious about it, because I talk about growing up, coming from Europe and moving to Canada, and, you know, being drawn in by American culture and stuff. And then there's a part here about, here we go. Yeah, I talk about all the TV shows in the morning, like the H.R. Puffin stuff and Gilligan's Island. Yeah. It says, but the television show that affected me the most, that changed my life really, came much later in the evening. Then the whole household could be pulled in and have their minds messed with together as one big happy family. That show was the Twilight Zone. The moment I heard the opening theme, I knew I was in for a bumpy ride. It was surreal, disturbing snapshots of American life, shaped my imagination more than any book or movie ever did. Each episode was a roller coaster ride of dread-filled anticipation, often awakening a fear I didn't even consider yet. I know a lot of these episodes, like, you left feeling like I had not even thought about that. In the end, with the help of the show's host and creator, Rod Serling, there was often a moralistic but sometimes disturbing outcome that wrapped up the whole thing as best as it could. Now, some episodes stayed with me for days, weeks, even years. There was enough material there for songs to last me a lifetime. I watched some of the old episodes recently, and though dated in many ways, they still have that effect on me. I have a soft spot for any episodes, and you know that dealt with anything about deserted cities or the end of the world as we know it, and a few survivors trying to find their way. A favorite show began with a man and woman walking, tell me what episode this is, waking up in a house in an abandoned town, a town where everything, including the food in the fridge, the squirrel and the fake tree, are all just props.
I forget the title, but it's our opening, because it's the third one. With Barry, the actor's name is Barry. I can't think of his last name.
Yeah. Anyway, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'll skip ahead. Since I suppose a psychoanalyst could read something into a young boy's fascination for such bleak views of the world. For me, it was just a comfort zone I could relate to, a world tailor-made for loners like me, because I was a loner, you know, and so I was like Rod. Rod was my grown-up version, you know, that kind of thing. You know, okay, let's get into it. By the way, what do you think? What age did Martin Sloan, what they say how old he is in the show? You see this aging, middle-aged businessman at the end of his ropes. Do you remember how old they said he is in the episode?
Martin Sloan was 36.
Isn't that crazy how I look at him there and he looks like he's 50-something, or, you know, because the way they dress, the haircut.
You know, we talked about this before, I think. But, you know, I won't say evolution in the sense of the evolution chain, but people look different today than they used to look back in the day.
Yeah.
And I agree. You know, Gig Young, Martin Sloan didn't look 36 in that episode.
No, in that episode, 36 is like over the hill, right?
Yeah.
And now it's not even, you know, middle age is like 55 or something. It's crazy. You know something? And some of these things I was able to verify just looking at Rod's notes, and I was right. And did you notice right away at the beginning, because this episode is all about time travel in a way, or going back to your childhood, when he's at the gas station and just before he heads out to town, he walks up and gets a cigarette pack out of a machine. Mm-hmm. And what cigarette machine, especially back then, has a complete, beautiful, clear mirror on the front of it. And you see his reflection and he looks at it, and then his reflection walks off. Mm-hmm. And there's an homage to like Alice in Wonderland through the looking glass, and going through it in sort of an alternate topsy-turvy world. And mm-hmm. I listened to one of Rod's little lectures, and that's exactly what he was going for. It's like, at this moment, he splits. Is it the real, or is it his reflection going? And even when he comes to the soda shop, big giant mirror. Most mm-hmm. of the conversation is in a mirror in this other alternate universe. another thing, when he walks into town, he's still figuring out, and he isn't quite sure what's going on here. You know, am I still in the same world? He starts calling out street names. And he's going, oh, he goes like Van Buren, Muni, Bradbury, Wilcox. And I looked it up. Bradbury for sure, but a couple others were contemporary writers of his time.
Bradbury, yeah, sci-fi writer.
And I didn't realize there was a bit of a little tug of war between those two when it became to scripts and things like that. So that was very interesting. But I wonder if that was a jab or something. He's going like, oh, Bradbury. Like, you know, like, I thought that was very, very cool. Bernard Edwards music, or Edwards, Herman music, of course. It's the first time I've heard him be a little bit sort of nostalgic and almost, you know, beautiful in his music. Then at a dime, it turns sinister, right? It's all happy, you know, merry-go-rounds and stuff, and then it goes rough. Another thing I noticed, and again, Rod's notes verified this. Remember when he first sees his parents? Mm-hmm. You remember he looks at them through, what do you call it, the mesh of the screen door.
Mesh,
and they look kind of weird, like almost like foggy. And I said, almost like ghosts. And that's exactly what, because are they real? Are they ghosts? So there's always this fine line. But the one thing that really amazed me is that Rod was very critical of this episode, even though it was one of his favorite. But as far as writing went, for him, he had a lot of difficulties with it. And he compared it to, what's our other favorite episode like this, Last Stop Willoughby? Mm-hmm. And he said that was years later, and he said he matured much more as a writer by then, and thought it was much better as a script. I'm not sure. But he had a real problem with the whole, he said, if anybody like you or I walked up to a door in our old hometown, and oh my God, there's our dead parents. And you can hug them and kiss them, and you're overwhelmed with love. And he was so cool and collected. He said in real life, you couldn't function after that. You'd be a mess. Right? So he said at that point, it fell apart. But I don't think so. I think, you know, you have to have a, what do you call that? When you go along with the illusion, what do you call that? Anyways, I did. But he had problems. I was amazed to see how critical he was of his own writing. Another thing was stuff. Now you notice the first little thing when he goes through the whole thing with his son, and there's a great moment where on the merry-go-round, you notice where the little boy breaks his leg, he gets off the merry-go-round, and all the children surround him. And he gets off, and it goes on its hill. There's this magic film magic where the light zooms in on him, and the whole world sort of focuses in. I think at that point he realizes what he's done and that he's changed time. Another thing Rod had, you know, trouble with, this is early on, but now we sort of had a lot of movies about time travel. How does that work? Like if you break your leg as a child, wouldn't you, when you first arrived at the town, have a broken leg?
Yeah, right, exactly.
It doesn't really matter. We go along with it because it's fantasy, but Rob was that a perfectionist that he's saying, did that really work?
Right.
I'm saying we don't care. It's amazing.
You know,
right?
Interesting that you said that point, because when I watched it again, as you said, he wasn't limping when he went in the diner. And when we come back, I got to talk about a couple more things on it. But you're absolutely right. He wasn't limping when he was walking, because he walked, the whole thing. And then, and when he hurts his leg, now he's changed history. And, and as you know, his father has that line and said, you know things, don't you? He said, yeah, Pop. Because he, and his father is like probably thinking, you know how I'm going to die, you know how, so on and so on. So go ahead.
You're right. You notice too, the very first hint that he's back in real time. He goes back to the soda shop. What's the first thing he sees where you go, oh, all of a sudden we're not the 20th century, but we're in modern times.
Yeah, the music.
And he sees, it says the stereophonic, it's a stereophonic turntable. Yep. I think when he, in his old world, there wasn't stereo. Everything's mono. Now he's in the stereo world. And they're hip kids and the music's playing, all that stuff.
But they had one old lady in the back. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
One old lady sitting in the back of the thing. I was like, I want to know what that meant to anything. But go ahead.
I didn't mention Frank Overton because I didn't know him that he was a big actor, but I knew his face. He wasn't in To Kill a Mockingbird. He wasn't that. Remember? Not
Gregory Peck.
Yeah, but I recognized him from probably the biggest sci-fi show at the time, apart from, or just after that, of course, it would have been a bit earlier, but a bit later after, when I first came to Canada from Germany, for me, was Star Trek. And he was in an episode of Star Trek. And I know that face, that he has a very intense face. And as I said, it was Rod's, probably his favorite episode, according to his daughters, they said. And he pretty well did the same thing every year. What's the name of his hometown, you said?
Binghamton.
And he would go to this place, And do you know where they lived?
No, I'm not sure.
Where they went from? This other thing. Did you know? Because I was trying to figure out, what does Cayuga stand for? What is that? Is that
Oh,
Cayuga
Cayuga
Raceway?
Lake. They got
Yeah.
a
They
cottage
lived
up
on
there,
Cayuga Lake. That's where they lived.
Yeah.
So they would go from Cayuga Lake to Binghamton, whatever it's called.
Binghamton.
And they had a merry-go-round kind of thing. He played marbles there as a kid, like little, Ron Howard did. And he had his old house there that you could still see every time you went, just like in the episode. So that was pretty amazing. So this was not only one of his favorite because of the popularity and the writing, but because it was his life. It was a snapshot. And I don't know, I didn't really read about his relationship with his own father, but you may have some more on that. But yeah, that's all. There's not really any trivia that you wouldn't know. I wouldn't dare to assume I don't know anything about this one that you don't know. Right?
Yeah, I almost was like, oh, he got my little talking point that I'm going to come to here in a minute when he turns it back over to me about Frank Overton in a role. But you're going to be surprised. I'm surprised you didn't pick up on this one. But you're going to be shocked.
Okay, over to you then. Do you have anything?
Okay. Well, let me do this because I was getting a little emotional, so I kind of didn't get to the end part, which I want to go back to the synopsis a little bit. So it has the great dialogue with his father about, there's only one summer and he has to go back. And Depp pointed something out, and I don't know if this is what Rod was doing, but he could have been, because I noticed it, but it didn't really dawn on me till Deb said it when we were watching it together last night. So they have the conversation, Martin and him, and he says, "Is it so bad where you are?" And he says, "I thought it was, Pop." The merry-go-round starts again. Debbie was kind of like, because now he's getting back on the, life is kind of like a merry, it goes around and around and around, good or bad. And she kind of was like, she felt, and she might be right, I'd have to verify this, but that the merry-go-round starts and now Martin's getting back on it. So like you said, when he goes back, the music, he wants to get the thing, and he says it's now, oh, that's 35 cents. He said 35 cents, and then because at the beginning when it was a dime, he gave the guy $1, and he's like, $1?
Yeah.
So he goes back, and then he goes back to the place, and it looks like his mindset has changed because his father said, "Isn't there merry-go-rounds and stuff like that where you're from?" And I think Rod was going. I don't think I'm almost positive he's going for that. You can find good and things in any time, and even with this pandemic going, there's still things, beauty that we can still find.
Yeah, you're right, because he's a much nicer guy after this. Remember, he's kind of cocky. He's like honking his horn. I want some gas.
Yes.
When he knows when he leaves, he's nice to the guy and even gives him a tip.
He gives him
at the gas station. He's a totally different attitude, even though he's got a limp leg now.
Yep.
Which is not a nice thing to have. At age 36, whatever he is, not like an old man, probably hobbling around for the rest of his life, but totally different viewpoint on the world. Yes. And he's a nice guy all of a sudden. So yeah, it's a nice ending.
That's
very
correct.
Nice.
Frank Overton. He was in another Twilight Zone.
Really?
Yes, he was in a Twilight Zone called season 4, 1963, called Mute, and it was one. You might not remember this, but they did a couple hour Twilight Zones, and this was one of them. And Ann Gillian played the little girl. She was mute, and we'll get to that episode. He played Sheriff Harry Wheeler in that episode, so he was on another Twilight Zone.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, some facts about Gig Young and Frank Overton. Believe it or not, he died. Well, I shouldn't say believe it or not, but he died very, very young, Frank Overton, which he looked very, very old. I'm not saying old, but older, which I'm going to get to a point you're going to be surprised when I tell you this. So he was 49 years old when he died, Frank Overton, in 1967. He died of a heart attack. Ooh. So he wasn't even 50 years old. Now, let's talk about Gig Young, because he was an interesting character. Believe it or not, Gig Young, which is a kind of different name, his real name, do you know what his real name was?
No.
Byron Ellsworth Barr. Now, how he got Gig Young out of that?
Why would you want to change that name?
Yeah, right? Exactly. Now, I read, it was my father's book, a book called Final Gig, because as I talked about before, or maybe we didn't talk about it on camera, he had a tragic life. He was a very, very bad alcoholic. And in 1978, he shot his wife at the time, and he turned a gun and he killed himself. It was a double shooting, and he did it. He was up thrice nominated for Best Supporting Actor. In Come Fill the Cup in 1952. Teacher's Pet, which was with Clark Gable in 1959. And then the 1969 movie, They Shoot Horses, Don't They?
Which I do remember that one. Yeah.
Good. And he played a manipulative MC named Rocky. And he won the Oscar for that role. He was very, very good in it. Jane Fonda was in it as well. She was nominated, but she didn't win. As well, something interesting. Would you believe, you mentioned age. You said, how old was he? He's supposed to be 36. In real life, Gig Young was almost 5 years older than Frank Overton was in this episode.
Really?
Gig Young was born in 1913, and Overton was born in 1918. Almost 5 years older than him, which is really, really interesting. Now, you mentioned about Rod. He absolutely, this is verified through Ann, went back every year. The sad part was when I interviewed Ann on my show, Rod's father died when he was in the Army. And he had enough points to go home, but for whatever reason, they wouldn't let him go home to his father's funeral. So this, Ann and I talked today, earlier, and she said she knows for a fact that every time my dad went back to Binghamton, which is where he lived, he was walking into that script. So that's how much that script meant to him.
Oh, you can tell, and it's one of the few where he had some dialogue partway through. You notice that too?
Very good point. That was one of my talking points. He actually did something, which I don't know if he ever did it in another episode. We'll see. He talked 3 times in this episode, 3 different times.
It was that important to him, I think.
It was that important to him. I know Ann said that she believes that was his favorite, and sometimes his favorite would change, but this, Ann did say without a doubt, was the most autobiographical thing about Rod. So again, just a beautiful episode. Showed his humanity. I mean, we always talk about that, but I mean, I told her as well when we talked that I adore him and I love him as a human being, because what he did with this show and other stuff too, but especially this show, because I don't want to minimize his other work because he had a lot of success before and he did some stuff after as well. But it's a different vibe than Night Gallery. I like Night Gallery, but I don't like Night Gallery. It's totally a different vibe. Though I like Night Gallery, but it's not even close for me with the Twilight Zone. But his humanity really, really shined, and how hard it had to be. And you mentioned this, how he saw his parents through that grainy thing as like ghosts, and I think that ties in, I would think, with losing his father when he was in the Army in World War II. So
I totally autobiographical.
Yeah. And just so you know, I don't know if he said it on camera, but I cried, and he said he cried.
I always get a couple of tears.
A certain point, they've had to reach over with one of these. But it doesn't matter. There's a couple episodes that do this to me. To be honest with you, my top 3 do this to me as well every time they get to me.
Then you notice something, which I know was on purpose. There's such a tender moment where, like, son, he knows it's his son, and he says, "There's only room for one Martin in this world, so you have to go back." And it's in any other moment, any other film, they would have embraced.
Yes.
But I think that maybe that wasn't possible in this time travel thing. Like, so I thought maybe it's a sign of the times that fathers and sons didn't embrace,
Right. Or it could have been because his father died. His father, I mean, I know he's going back, but maybe he was thinking because he wasn't able to see his father. But it might have been because, like you said, in fairness to my dad kind of broke the mold. He was very affectionate, but my grandparents on the Italian side of my family, my grandparents were both born in 1919. Very loving, but they weren't the type that they hugged you. You knew they loved you. They showed you by their acts, but they weren't like, "I love you." They were proud of you, and they loved to come and visit you. But my grandparents, no, they weren't like that. My grandfather was standoffish, but you knew he loved you, but he was standoffish. And I think that's another reason why. And you're right, they didn't embrace. But my father and I, that's one thing because my father raised me. When my parents divorced, I don't want to get into too much off topic, but my mom wasn't the greatest person. I had no problem sharing it. But my father was my mother and father. So he made up for a lot of stuff that a mother would have brought to the table. So I think that's another reason, that relationship that he had with his dad, because his mother, as you know, Annette, she never came back into the scene. And the father was listening, but he wasn't as receptive. The father was more receptive. The mother wasn't receptive at all. She pushed her car. She didn't want to hear it. And one other part that I got to talk about, I know you noticed this too. Remember when he rang the bell on the bike?
Yeah.
His dad reached, he put his hand there and they started talking.
Yeah.
And then the glove, that was another part when he had the glove. Just
the baseball glove? Yeah, yeah.
Baseball glove. It was just so touching.
That
okay.
is very, very good.
All right. Anything else you want to add to this episode?
No. I left this one to you because I knew it was your favorite. And you'll be the expert on this one. But for any male, anybody, any son, this is one that tugs at your heartstrings and we can all relate to in so many levels, Right. And I love that about the show, right? Because he can have pure horror and terror, but he can be so, warm and fuzzy sometimes.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, how I know your dad passed, right, Gord?
Mm-hmm.
How old would your dad be today?
I don't know how old he'd be today, but he died at pretty young, at 75 or age 75, which is the oldest in my whole family. My God, I mean, he came through, in World War II and stuff. I think his dad was, gone in the 60s, and my grandfather died at 64. It's like I'm the oldest, so I got fingers crossed. So he was, but I always thought him as older. It's exactly like this episode.
Right.
When I think of my dad, my age as a child, when I think back, he'd come home, with white shirt and a tie and sleeves rolled up, maybe for dinner, and like you see, and things like this. And probably, he was younger than I was now. And I look at pictures of now, I think he was like an old business guy.
Different.
That's that generation. So I forget sometimes, that relationship and how dads and sons were different back then than they are now. Right. Maybe not with your dad, but it's definitely, it's so close to our hearts, I think, because of that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because everybody's got their own.
Yeah, my dad would have been 9. My dad was 40 years my senior when I was born in 68. He was born in 28, so he would be 93. Actually, his birthday is coming up April 12th. He would have been 93. But so all of my tastes, Sinatra and all of that, the old stuff, and the Twilight Zone, my dad turned around.
Oh, my dad too.
It comes from my dad. Now I gotta say something. So you heard Gord say earlier Bernard Edwards, and he caught himself and he said Bernard Herrmann. But do you know why Gord said Bernard Edwards? Because Bernard Edwards was from the group, correct me if I'm wrong, Chic, right?
Yeah, I don't know why.
Right, no, I'm not knocking you, but I'm tying this in because Gord is so. This dude is so talented, has so much success, but he'll never tell you. He's like Sinatra, and all the success Sinatra had. I'm not trying to make comparisons, but I'm making a comparison here. Sinatra would rather show you the scars than the medals because he was humble in that sense. And Gord is the same way. I mean, if you look him up with the spoons and all the success he had. But he said Bernard Edwards, and I know this because Sandy and I, who's other part of the spoon, Sandy talked about Bernard Edwards. Bernard played that bass, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And he was in Chic because if you watch the show when Gord and I first met, he worked with
Nile Rodgers.
I almost said Nigel Collins, but Nigel, what's his name?
Nile Rodgers.
Nigel Rodgers. Yeah, Nigel Collins is a writer and Nigel Benn is a fighter. So his Nigel is Nigel Rodgers. So Bernard Edwards sadly has passed away, but that's where he went into the Twilight Zone. Oh, look at that.
Oh, my battery.
Bernard Edwards was channeling. Bernard Edwards said, "You cannot use my name. It's copyrighted."
No, we were good. We were good.
We were good. That's why he said Bernard Edwards, so I got to kick at it.
No, we were still the only Canadian band that Nile Rodgers has ever produced. And he's like one of the biggest. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now as a producer.
Oh, yeah.
And we did 2 albums with him. And Bernard Edwards was in the studio helping Sandy out as our bass player and got her into certain styles and stuff. And those guys really took us under their wings. So very lucky to have that.
Yep. So
one day I'm going to do more spoon stuff. I got to, we can talk about that.
We're going to go in so many different directions with this because I actually think some of his music was influenced kind of Twilight, especially.
Oh, absolutely.
I think Nova Heart, at least the video aspect of it, to me is very Twilight Zone-ish.
Yeah.
But okay, I'm gonna let you go first. We know it's not.
Oh,
3
yes,
because if it's 3, everything's going black like the end of the Twilight Zone.
All right.
What do you got?
Okay.
Okay.
That was the right way. I see, that'd be wrong. And it's definitely not 3. So this is right at the top there. I can't even, it's maybe a 10, but, you know, I got to leave room just in case. Here's a question for you. Do you know of, in all the ratings of a Twilight Zone, where this one stands among the fans?
It's one of the top ones of all of them.
What, do you know what number?
Yeah, I'd have to look and see, but it's definitely, it's number 9 of all time.
Which is strange for me, because how can there be much more above this episode?
Yeah.
There is room. But according to...
ratings are always subjective, and people, you know, a lot of people love the William Shatner one with Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. That's a very popular one. You know, Last Stop at Willoughby. So different ones. But, you know, come on, if you didn't know what I was going to...
It's got to be a 10 for you, right?
You know it's a 10, you know.
I thought you were going to give me a Spinal Tap, 11.
11. Oh, I love Spinal Tap. What a great movie. What a great movie. Okay, well, that was, like I said, episode number 5. I can't believe we've been doing this 5 weeks already. It seems like we just started. I got to put this out. Getting a lot of feedback about it. I don't always go by views of shows. You know, of course you want views, but I like quality. So sometimes quality over quantity is an important thing to me just as well. A lot of people that follow me on Twitter, this is resonating with them. And when somebody says, you made me go back to the show, or you made me have a stronger appreciation or a new appreciation, same thing, for the show, that's really our goal. We want to bring it to people that may not know about the show. And if you do, and you didn't know some of these facts, or you did, or if you got additional facts, because we don't know all the facts and trivia, leave your comments below. We always like to see comments. Again, whatever button is in the corner, subscribe. And for the next couple episodes, like I said, we're doing the role reversal. But yeah, this definitely, I'm surprised I got through this without welling up. But again, Gord is from a new location. And you know what? I didn't see anything. Is there anything back there? There's a lot of little nice knickknacks. Anything in there Twilight Zone-ish? No? Because you were going to do that.
Yeah, I did that. I did that downstairs. And you know, you always plan to do something, but, you know. There's some interesting stuff from my past growing up, but not, you know, I don't put things up on shelves that don't have meaning. There isn't just like down there's a little pot in the corner, like a little urn. It's not just a little clay thing. That's what my grandmother back in Germany, when she first met, you know, her husband back in whenever it was, the 20s, would go out to where he worked, and they brought beer. It was like in a ceramic urn.
Yeah, right. With top, yeah. It's
like delivering beer, you know, milk to you know, in a bottle. So you think they instead of beer bottles, they came around with like a tub of beer. So, yeah, you know, funny stuff.
People are going to wonder, did you give Lucas some Benadryl to knock?
That's a Great Dane. They sleep 24 hours a day. You know, 23, and then they mess around for the other hour.
There you go. Yeah. All right, folks, we're going to close this episode out of Last Stop, the Twilight Zone show. And again, this one is my favorite of all time, and you came up with some great stuff too.
Yeah.
All right, folks, I'm going to say goodbye from America.
Goodbye from Canada.
Until next time.